Hi everyone, my name is Matt, also known as the UKAstroNut. In this video we're going to be looking at the weekly news. So the first story, we'll look at the European Space Agency mission Gaia. So if you don't know what Gaia is, it's a satellite that was launched about a few months ago. And its main aim is to map positions and the velocities of 1 billion stars in our very own galaxy. And what it does is it maps these positions by looking at the stars very accurately, and it knows exactly where it's pointing, and so it can look at the stars and get their positions at a really accurate level. So the point of Gaia is it has to know exactly which way it's pointing, and any sort of slight nudges or movements or any errors in where it's looking can cause big problems for Gaia. And actually recently the problem that they found is that before they launched, they worked out how many tiny micrometeoroids there would be. So micrometeoroids is a tiny little piece of rock and dust and things. And they thought there wasn't going to be many of these around where Gaia is. So not many of these little micrometeoroids would be hitting Gaia. But it turns out there's a lot more than they thought. And although these things are really small, and when they hit Gaia they don't make, they don't have much effect. Because there's so many of them, they can actually knock Gaia and make it move its position and where it's looking slightly in the sky. This can really mess up the sort of accurate readings that Gaia takes of measuring where stars are. So the problem here is that there's much more micrometeoroids around where Gaia is in space than they expected, and so this is kind of having problems on the accuracy of Gaia telescope. And there's lots of other telescopes around here as well. And so this is sort of, we didn't really know that there was this many micrometeoroids around here until Gaia, so this could be a bit of a problem for the future. The second one is a story that was a scientific paper, which is about an unexplained material found in some nearby galaxies. So this was using some X-ray telescopes. And what they were doing was they were looking at a cluster of galaxies called the Perseus cluster. And what they can do is they can do something called spectroscopy. And spectroscopy is they look at a galaxy and they get the light from the galaxy and they spread it out into all its constituent parts. So if you've ever seen a prism before, and you get the white light come in and it all spreads out into red, yellow, green, blue and so on and so forth. They kind of do this, and what they can see is that different materials, so different things like iron, oxygen, carbon and stuff, these little particles can leave traces in the spectra. So when you get this lovely rainbow of all the colours, there can be some very thin lines and blank lines missing in the spectra, so really dark patches. And this is kind of an indication of there being a material there. So for example, if you see a black line a certain wavelength to a certain colour, that could be an indication that carbon's there. So this is kind of how we detect what material are in stars and galaxies and things like this. Well, scientists recently found that when they're looking at this cluster of galaxies, that there was one of these absorption lines from these dark patches in the spectra, and they don't know any elements, they don't know any materials that cause this specific dark patch. So it's not something like carbon, lead, oxygen, hydrogen or anything like this. They have no idea what it is. They've never seen it before. So they then looked at some more galaxies and they found the exact same thing, and then other people using another telescope as well on their own without any sort of working with the other group, they found the exact same thing. This has even been found in Andromeda, which is the nearest galaxy to us. And they still don't know what this actually is, and so there's a lot of ideas now that perhaps this is something to do with dark matter, and this is some indicator of an absorption of dark matter. So there's now some sort of, some beginning work getting into trying to work out what kind of materials or what particles could cause this. But anyway, this is kind of exciting if you're interested in dark matter, and it seems to be sort of a very new and interesting and upcoming thing. So the third and final news story is that Hubble has found some really dry exoplanets. So an exoplanet is just a planet that goes around another star other than our own sun, and the way that we have an idea of how planets form, we think they should have a certain amount of water in them. But the problem is that Hubble has been looking at 3 planets in particular and really studied them very carefully. And these planets are really big and they're very close to their star. So a lot of the water should be heated up and should be in a kind of, in like a sort of steam. It should all be in the atmosphere. So it should be kind of a gaseous kind of water, so like steam kind of thing, like a water vapour. but they don't actually find that much water. They find significantly less water than they think there should be, according to their models of how planets form. So this is kind of interesting because there doesn't seem to be as much water as we think, and so our idea of how planets form and how planets get water and things like this is probably a bit screwed up, and actually it suggests that we haven't quite got everything right yet. So again, these three stories are pretty interesting. So Gaia is suffering some problems. We've potentially found some indicator of dark matter, but if not, then it's some very strange and exotic material that we've never seen before. And our idea of how planets form and how planets get water seems to be a little bit off, according to some recent observations by Hubble. That's your weekly news. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave some comments, tell people about the channel and everything, and I'll see you guys soon.